It's time for the unofficial 40. Soonerscoop.com's very official recruiting podcast featuring Soonerscoop.com recruiting publisher Josh McCuistion. Get your recruiting fix from the leader in Sooner recruiting. It's the unofficial 40 with your hosts, Soonerscoop.com publishers Gary Murdoch and Josh McCuistion. Eddie Radovich.
All right, it is happy St. Patrick's Day to you as we're recording this on St. Patrick's Day, and also March Madness is officially kicked off. So we are joined by the entire crew once again, and Josh McCuistion joins us from his home base. Josh, how are we doing today? Josh, are you alive?
I'm good. Good. Had the audio on mute.
Josh is having a real problem with technology so far today.
Oh, not my day.
Eddie Radosevich.
At least it's Friday,
is
though.
in tow.
Hello.
He's not asked me for money today, so apparently he's doing okay in the NCAA tournament.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Joe Duvall is here.
I put a bar of soap in my mouth after last week, so I should be good to go.
Yeah, just watch yourself today, pal, all right?
No F-bombs. Going to keep those to a minimum.
Good. I won't have to do any post-editing like last time. We're kind of sitting here. It's the NCAA tournament time. I don't know what you boys have planned for today. I would love it if I could just go hang out at a bar. And I'd come hang out with you, Eddie. Go to that Buffalo Wild Wings up there on Northwest Expressway.
It's a good one. It's a really good one.
I had some burger there yesterday. It was unbelievable. Like the meltdown, I think they call it.
Yeah, I looked
It's like
it up online.
patty melt with like a ring. It's like a mozzarella stick, but shaped in the shape of a bun or of a meat sandwich.
It looked really good in the picture that they have on the.
I can't even talk.
On the
it's not a meat sandwich. It's a beef patty.
the Buffalo Wild Wings website. They had a really good picture of it.
It was good, man.
You know their menu is really good when they have the menu, or you have to pick what they have a picture of. Like you can't go off the radar.
Yeah. By the way, Edlin, sponsorships are available for the podcast. So there you go. No, it's been interesting, kind of watching the tournament. Yesterday was let's just say it sucked yesterday. Other than Northwestern and Vanderbilt, the tournament sucked. The best part was watching Doug Collins in the stand try not to cry.
That was awesome.
As his son won, which I'm sure just infuriated Eddie Radosevich.
As somebody that had Vanderbilt, yeah, it kind of infuriated me. I would have appreciated more if he was crying because they lost, but it's no big deal.
Special moments between father and son.
Really need some teams to come through today, so we'll be okay.
I feel like we need to discuss one major thing that I've noticed on all these star ratings on the podcast is that people want to hear more from Josh McCuistion.
That can't be. There's no way that's right.
Of course, they probably just think it's probably because they want you to just talk recruiting for an hour and a half.
Well, and this is the worst possible podcast to have this conversation because literally this might be the most quiet week in recruiting I can remember because, you know, coaches are like everybody else. They're taking their spring break. They're relaxing. I mean, they're still talking to kids, but you haven't seen a bunch of offers go out. Nobody's visited campus this week. It's been the scoop was all about what's coming next week and beyond. And there was almost no talk of, well, this happened this week. There's none of that. I think basketball recruiting was by far more interesting over the last 48 hours.
Well, yeah, and that's, Joe, that's kind of the thing. Like, when people approach me, like, when I'm out and about, and they want to, NCAA tournaments going on, the first thing they always ask me is, God, what happened to OU's basketball program? Are they suck from now on? And I'm just like, no, it's like, they just have a lot of young guys, and they lost a lot. It's like people, I guess they just didn't pay attention to how OU lost games this year. I mean, the loss at Texas, the loss at Iowa State where they were up big and just melted down. It was just that was a team that didn't know how to finish games, but to me, it was never really a lack of talent.
Very rarely were they just run out of the gym. That Florida game that happened, it happened maybe a couple other times, but very rarely did that happen. A lot of the times, you're right, Kerry, they would even hold leads in games, and they couldn't close out games. They couldn't finish them. They led Kansas at half in both games. And they should have won in Lawrence probably if they didn't blow it down the stretch. This team has capabilities, but it's also important to remember that they're very, very young because not only did they lose Buddy Hield, they lost Isaiah Cousins, who played in more games than any other OU basketball player ever. They lost Ryan Spangler, who's one of the top rebounders, I think he's number 4 all time in Oklahoma history. They lost Steve Henson and Lou Hill to head coaching jobs. They were assistants last year. That's replacing a heck of a lot. And they're all, if you also know, Jordan Woodard was hurt for the last half of the season, basically. So
and out for undisclosed reasons for other parts of it.
Right. And even when he was on the court, he didn't look like the Jordan Woodard of old. So
he really had that stretch. West Virginia, they went on the road, beat West Virginia. Then he kind of, I can't remember the game they played after that one. But it was like there was a 2-game stretch there where Jordan Woodard was kind of like the guy that you thought, okay, this is what you're going to get out of a senior, out of a guy that started so many games in his career. And it's just like he just I think part of it was mental. It was obviously physical, but he just didn't have a great year. I mean, I think Christian James, you expected him to step up. And you remember going back to the beginning of the season when they had that scrimmage at Oregon when he apparently scored 25 points or whatever.
And he didn't score over 20 the entire year. He didn't have a game over 20.
And really, it was a team that had to find out that Cam McGusty was really their best player down the stretch.
Yeah, the first half of the year, they gave Christian James every opportunity to be the guy. He played 30 minutes. It wasn't working out. And when they put McGusty in the lineup, you could see that he just had a different level to his game, especially this year. And I think Christian James only topped 10 points one time over the last 15 games or so. So it's the combination.
Christian Doolittle gave you more, than he did this year.
I think the freshmen in general were the bright spot, right? I mean, Christian Doolittle and Cam McGusty both looked like they're going to be really good players in the Big 12 for a few years. Jordan Shepard had some bright spots. I think also Jamuni McNeese had a few bright spots where he showed that that potential that everybody's talked about for so long. You saw flashes of that game at West Virginia. Where they won, they beat number 7 West Virginia on the road. I think Jamuni had close to a double-double in the first half of that game. So whenever he can realize that he's a 6'10 guy with some athleticism that really nobody else in this conference has, he can put it together. But the thing with him is kind of getting him to focus on basketball. And I think that's going to be, that's kind of what happens when you lose all that leadership from the year before. Kind of a team can wander in the wilderness a little bit, and I think that's what happened to OU this year. And look, Lon Kruger is coaching as many games right now as Bob Stoops is. So, I mean, there's a reason to be disappointed in what happened with the basketball team this year. You don't have to be in love with the job Lon Kruger did this year. He just set a record for most losses in a season. I just would say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just let it take its course. He's shown everywhere he's been that this doesn't become a trend. He hasn't had losing seasons back-to-back years since his first 3 years at Panhandle State or something. So I'll just say, Trae Young coming in with this young talent, trust the process, which is kind of a cliche, but that's what I would say here.
Any person that talks like Lon Kruger should lose his job after this year,
come on.
I personally want to punch in the face and then strangle. Like that's the dumbest thing I think somebody can say.
Called assault, Eddie.
Huh?
It's called assault.
No, it'd be called homicide.
I was going to say, is he going right past assault?
Yeah, because I think that's the dumbest thing. Like, if you say that, if you post that on the board, breaking news, I don't take you seriously anymore. I will not respond to any of your posts. Well, I probably will, but
Capel had 2 horrid seasons before they fired him, and it was only because he was mired in a bunch of NCAA scandals. Kruger won't be in any NCAA scandals, and I can almost guarantee you he won't have back-to-back years the way Capel did. So it's just let next year play out. He just landed, the second or the highest-ranked recruit in Oklahoma to ever commit to OU. So just let it play out. Let's see what happens next year.
Joe, be really bold. I know there's so much you can't foresee, and trust me, I hate when I get these hypotheticals. Where do you see OU next year?
How much difference can Trae Young make?
I mean, how good are they?
I think they're a tournament team next year for sure. I not for sure, but I think that's where they should be. I think they should be a tournament team next year. There won't be a better backcourt, or there might not be a better backcourt in the Big 12 than Trae Young and Cam McGusty. Christian Doolittle in the post. And Kadeem Lattin's coming back. While he had a disappointing offensive season, he was still a guy that gets you 9 rebounds a game, a couple blocks a game, and he's coming back for a senior year. So I think that there is a lot of reason to believe that these close games that they couldn't pull out this year, they'll find that margin next year. 20 wins, I would say, is about right. 19, 20 wins is kind of what you would hope for overall.
The one thing that I think I am worried about, though, with this team coming back, everybody mostly seems like they're going to come back. I think there's some outliers possibly that could end up transferring, but I think everybody just expects Trae Young to come in, average 35 a game, and he kind of just take over. I think Trae Young's really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that he's going to be a guy that comes in and averages 30 points a game or 25 points a game. Because I don't think Trae Young's a one and done guy. So I don't know. I just think that there's going to be very high expectations, rightfully so. 5-star kid, but at the same time, you need Christian James, you need Cameron McGusty, you need Rashard Odom to all make those steps in their own games to come to bring it all together, I guess, is the best way to put it.
I'm really interested to see what he is in terms of a floor leader. Like, in terms of what type of offense is he going to be capable of running? Can he get other people involved? Can he keep other people involved? I mean, watching the Thunder last night, like you watch Russell Westbrook right now, yeah, he can take over a game, and he can shoot 30 shots a game. He can score 40 or even 50. But that's not always the best thing when you have one guy that can do that. The Thunder are better when he's getting other people involved like he did last night.
Mm-hmm.
And he's scoring 20, 25, taking 12. I think he took 17 shots or something last night. But you can be the best player in the country and score a whole lot of points. It doesn't mean your team's going to be any good. Is Trae Young going to be a guy that's coachable to the point? And he's gotten criticized some, in high school for this. Is he going to be a guy that can make everyone else around him better, or is he going to be a guy that comes in here looking to be the star of the show?
I think that's a fair question. It's one of those things where every high school kid, especially in basketball, that's good, they're going to dominate most of their shots for their high school team. It's just the way that works. And so going into a situation where you're going to, I think he's still probably going to shoot 15, 20 times a game, but he's going to have to find ways to make sure to get other guys involved. I think the big thing for Trae Young coming in and talking with the people at OU, they all year kind of had this feeling that they just were missing something on offense, that they didn't quite have what they needed on offense. And I can tell you for a fact that multiple times it was mentioned to me that if Trae Young was on this team, we would have won that game. Just a few points here, a bucket here, there. That's the difference.
A free throw late.
That's what he can bring. Now, it's going to be a different style of basketball than what they played last year, but it's not too different. Buddy Hield kind of had a similar style. He's a bigger guy, but where if he had a shot, he was going to take it. And I think that's what's going to happen with Trae Young. And what's going to be interesting is where does Cameron McGusty find a role here? Because he had a really, really good freshman season, and a lot of that was dominating the ball, shooting off dribble. So how does he kind of play off of Trae, maybe more of a catch-and-shoot role? How does that kind of stuff play out?
And like Buddy and Isaiah Cousins had a few years together to kind of figure each other out and what their roles were. It'll be interesting because McGusty really has proven himself in college, and Trae Young hasn't. But you got to know that Trae Young's coming in here saying, I'm the guy, and everyone else is going to help me. Is McGusty going to handle that well?
Yeah. Well, and don't forget this team is going to return 86.7% of their scores. So I think that getting him in on June 1st will be really important. I think I might even go out to a couple practices. I'm interested to just see how everything works together during the summer months and then leading into the season next year. And I don't know. I don't think there's any doubt though that they have the guy in place that can put this whole thing together, make it cohese together.
And this is a team and an offense, like you mentioned, with Latin, with McNeese. They can run, pick and roll stuff. Let me ask you guys, because you've seen him more in person, does Trae Young have the handles? Does he have the patience to be able to kind of do some of that stuff offensively?
He has the handles for sure. Patience, I don't think he has poor patience or anything like that. I think it's something he's going to have to continue to learn because it's one of those things. He's so good with one tool. He's such a good shooter that sometimes in high school he would shoot double teamed 30 feet away and it still would work out fine. And that's just something he can't do here. If the pick and roll's not there, if the guy's kind of hedging out further, is he just going to go say, okay, I'm just going to shoot this from 30 feet, or is he going to try to move the offense a little more? Those are really where OU's going to have to find themselves. I thought you made a great point about Buddy and Isaiah had to play a few years before that thing really became a well-oiled machine. And I think of Trae.
Well, I make great points.
Oh, you always do. And the thing about Trae is like his kind of NBA comparison is just style play Steph Curry. And if you remember Steph, when he first came to the NBA, it wasn't like he was who he is now immediately. I mean, he was a good rookie and a good player that you could tell he was going to be a great scorer. But it wasn't. He had to. He
wasn't an MVP,
right? He had to figure out kind of how he was going to find his shots, where the space is, where the speed of the game, and that kind of thing. I think that's maybe similar to how Trae's career goes. To Eddie's
he's got to develop a style for the next level.
Exactly. So I don't think he'll be a one and done. I'm kind of with Eddie. It'll probably maybe 2-3 years where you really see him start to explode and really come into his game.
It's really interesting too watching him play with Norman North as opposed to I remember watching him play with the Moken Elite over the summer in the. I think it was the Peach Jam or one of the big AAU tournaments, and I don't want to say that Trae was bored by playing with Norman North, but I definitely think, and same thing for that matter with Brady Manick and seeing some of the write-ups about him this summer. It just seems like there's only so much you can do when you're getting triple teamed and quadruple teamed by guys, and with playing with those AAU teams, it seems like. You're obviously playing with better competition, but it just seemed like they played different styles of game, and it's going to be interesting to see where that happy medium is between the style of play and what they're able to do once they make the jump into the next step. And you add the Hans Pola guy, and I don't think anybody. I don't even know if the guy's real, to be honest, but it's gonna be interesting to see what he brings. I mean,
he's just a prospect profile that somebody made up.
Yeah, I mean. They keep saying he's from Finland, but you can't find any video of him. There's I think one video on YouTube, and it's
grainy.
The worst quality that you can ever find.
A FIBA international game he played in for Finland. The only thing I know about Hans Pola is they just say he was bigger than they expected when he showed up on campus. Sometimes guys are listed 6'10", 260, 270. You think, oh, okay, he's probably going to be 6'8", 230. But they said he was every bit of 6'10", 270. So at least he's going to have size coming in. And to Eddie's point about the AAU stuff with Trae, and on Trae's AAU team was Michael Porter, the number one player in the country. He's played with the best players in the country. It's not just like he plays with Norman North all the time. So that will help his adjustment. And kind of what Josh alluded to earlier, Oklahoma and Michael Porter Jr. they're flirting a little bit here. Michael Porter Jr. Signed a letter of intent to Washington in November. His dad,
which he hasn't been released
which he hasn't been released from yet.
Which is probably something we should put out there. Makes recruiting someone very difficult when they haven't been released from an LOI.
Coaches can't talk to Michael Porter. If you'll notice, a lot of the reports come out, Trae Young's talking to Michael Porter. Trae Young's recruiting Michael Porter. If he's still in his letter of intent to Washington, the coaches cannot talk to him. Now, his dad was an assistant at Washington where he's lost his job when Lorenzo Romar got fired. So the speculation is maybe the coaches can talk through him and Trae can talk through Junior, and that they could get that relationship to work. Now, the problem for OU is they're going to have to find a transfer to get Michael, and his brother's probably coming with them and reclassifying for 2017. So you have to find 2 transfers, and then their dad likely wants to be their assistant coach. That's why people think Missouri's going to be the ultimate choice here, because Missouri and Porter Sr. are very close in their talks for a job. But Oklahoma has got his ear. Trae Young has got his ear. Michael Porter's listening to OU. That's the number 1 player in the country for 2017. And while it's probably not going to happen, I think it's another sign where you look at that Oklahoma is at least put themselves in a position, landing elite guys like Trae Young, making the Final Four last year, having Buddy Hield be a star, where guys will listen. Michael Porter will listen. You can get their ear. And as Josh always says in football stuff, that's half the battle, just getting them on campus, getting them listening. And you might not always get one, but the more seeds you plant, the more plants that are going to ultimately grow.
You need to.
That's some great analysis. The whole time you were giving that, this dude won. I think he won both the Showcase Showdowns.
He won it.
Holy crap! We're all watching the same thing.
Okay, so you were watching that.
I'm watching it. Yeah, I just rewound
so if he got
it to see if
within
I saw it right.
$439, does he win both showcases?
I think
so,
if it's
right?
winning 1,000, I think they get both. I think that's right.
I was just waiting to see if he was going to kiss the other guy. It was a dude, very effeminate.
Oh, really?
That had to be his boyfriend, don't you think, Josh?
I think there's a good chance that's a possibility.
Not
the
that there's
whole
anything
time,
wrong
like
with
I
that,
just saw
but-
Male
him do the
cheerleaders at
wheel.
UCLA.
He was wearing a UCLA sweater. I wonder if he knows the Ball
Are we
family.
typecasting because of the UCLA? I mean,
LeVar Ball's going to
By
claim
the
half
way,
of it.
is LeVar Ball, let me ask you, Josh, is LeVar Ball the craziest father in the history of recruiting / athletes?
he's crazy like a fox. Like I think for a while I was like, okay, he's just nuts. He's just absolutely nuts. But then when he started with the Charles Barkley stuff and I beat MJ one-on-one back in the day, blah blah blah. You're like, no, you're trolling it. Like, and he is. I saw they were talking about it this morning on one of the morning talk shows. He's gonna get he will get a TV show. They will get a reality show about the Ball family. Like, I bet you money on it.
They will
And
not
he'll
get
make
a
ton of money.
billion-dollar marketing deal, though.
Oh, no, hell no. That's not going to happen. But it's one of those things where if they get even, like, it kind of puts it on everybody's mind, and it's made that whole family, including Lonzo, who I think we all know is one of the truly great players in college basketball this year. It's made him even more famous. He's going to have more cachet. He's going to get more he's going to get more money from Nike or Adidas or whoever it is he goes with. I mean, there is, because this is the environment we live in now. When you can do this faux reality, he's just saying things to stay in the headlines, and it's made him famous.
He's a male Kardashian, basically.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And his kids are going to get more recruited. I was listening to Dan Dockich talk this morning, and he was like, yeah, the LaMelo kid, but, he scored 92, and everybody's all excited about that. He goes, he's nowhere near the player Lonzo is. But I guarantee you he's going to get recruited at an extremely high level, partially because he's a big name guy. I mean, coaches fall prey to that stuff too. But
I saw this morning the guy. You're right. I mean, I didn't even think about it that way, but he is getting a lot of attention. I saw that the dude that does the basketball impersonations, like he did James Harden, he does Russell Westbrook. Like, he's doing Lonzo Ball now. Like, he just released that one this morning.
God, I hope UCLA gets beat today.
was it just him talking?
No, I mean, it was him.
Did he
It was him
actually try to
shooting,
hoop?
like the way that he plays basketball. Yeah, like the way that he shoots, the way that he guards, the
That
way
is
that
a
he drives to
weird
the hoop.
release that he has, like coming across his body.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, he was doing it. It was
So
hilarious.
But see, this is the thing, guys. Like, name another dad whose release you know what it looks like of any player in college basketball.
No, that's the son, Lonzo.
Oh, okay.
I'm
you're
talking about the kid at UCLA.
Okay,
He was
I got it
imitating
wrong.
him. Yeah.
Okay, I misheard from
Is
the
it
start.
LeVar? Is that his dad?
Yeah.
I get him confused.
LeVar's
There's too
the
many
dad.
L's.
LeVar, Lonzo, LaMelo, and there's a third one, and I don't know what his name is.
Lemon Jello.
I think the one that we forget is the senior that's actually really good and committed to UCLA right now. Because LaMelo is the youngest one, isn't it?
Or, yeah.
That's funny.
He's the cherry picker.
Yeah.
What would you do if you had kids that were that good? I mean, how do you handle something like that? Do you go low-key? Do you go kind of Archie Manning and you just hang back? Or do you go ahead and embrace the spotlight a little bit with your kids?
You know what? I think Archie Manning might secretly be nuts. Because, I mean, like, yeah, he sat in the stands, in Tennessee and Ole Miss or whatever and seemed like but he's at everything.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that, like, behind the scenes, he, like, pulls out a switch or something?
I mean, he has nothing else to do, though. He played in the league. They have millions of dollars, I bet.
Just all that attention's going through, I guess, Eli now. It's like what Doug Collins is doing, right? Once you're done
we should get Josh, like, really in trouble and make him do a top 5 craziest parents that he's ever dealt with.
Oh,
That would
man.
be
I'm
fun.
trying to.
Because there's a few I would have to think about their names. Like, I remember their acts more than I remember who you were, whose parent you were. Because it's rarely ever, like, a notable person. Like, I dealt with Gabe Eichert's dad all the time. He's a great guy. He was super easy
But
to
he's
deal
crazy.
with. Yeah, but, like, wait, what did you say? I think I missed something.
I said, but he's crazy? And you said, yeah.
No, God. I missed the crazy, but yeah, I thought you were backing me up on something. Of course, you threw me under the bus. So sorry, Mr. Eichert. But what I was saying is, Oh, damn it! I've lost my whole train of thought now.
You were saying that you remember the craziness more than the people.
Yeah, I can remember a parent showing up, and Jeremy Crabtree can tell the story because he lived it. But I can remember a parent found out what room Krabby was staying at in a hotel at one of the National All-Star events, and knocked on his door and had been emailing him we're gonna fight, I'm gonna hit you.
I thought maybe you meant sexual favors or something.
No. Now those are some good stories. You could pick the trophy mom capitals of the world. There are some. There's a lot of votes for Phoenix. There are a lot of the stay-at-home moms that really they take good care of themselves.
That's the one that I want to do. I'll do those rankings. I'll take care of that.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, you'll do the research is what you'll do.
Yeah, exactly.
And the sister research.
Yeah, we could do that too.
With that comment alone, I know one family that's going to be mentioned on the board right now. And Eddie knows who I'm talking about, and there's no question.
Absolutely, it comes with territory, though.
Yeah.
My problem is that the crazy parents that I've always dealt with, I'm still dealing with them, so I don't want to name names. But you can Josh could probably guess who would be really high on my list.
I got a couple in there, yeah.
What's it? You got an anonymous story? A story without a name?
No, I mean, really, for the most part, all really nice people. But it's I'll just say this. It's Josh can back me up on this. There are some people that they played at OU. They had good careers. They're now out in the real world. They still complain about their rankings to this day. Dude, you got a scholarship. You played college football. You started. Why are you still worried about whether you were a 3 or a 4-star?
I had a parent not long ago, and I think I told some of you guys about this, and I'll leave their name out to protect the innocent. And I will say the kid was one of the most nonchalant recruits I ever covered. Super easy, very casual. Dad contacted me over the winter, probably after the Sugar Bowl, probably somewhere in that ballpark, that a few of the offers on the kid's page were not correct. He didn't have all the offers listed on his page. That kid hasn't been recruited in 3 years. He's playing for a college football team. Literally, and not some scrub. He plays. And Dad is worried about some offer that had nothing to, the teams were not heavily involved in his recruitment, had nothing serious to do with anything. And he was concerned that they were not properly checked on his profile page.
3 years into his college career. Yeah.
Who would even care? I mean, I guess at the time, maybe you care a little bit just to make sure it's accurate.
Of course, yeah, no, in real time, I get it. I do. But now, what? And it's the same thing. I can there's one dad I can think of right now that was pretty crazy. And I could drop the name, but it wouldn't matter because the kid, I ended up going small school ball, which is what I told his dad from the start I saw for him. And he's like, well, we're getting letters from Tennessee and Oklahoma and Ohio State. I'm like, man, that's great. I'm not going to rank you higher because of that. That's just not where I see you. But if you are getting all that attention, who cares what I think?
See,
I don't have any ego about myself.
And I have to say that I did Josh wrong a lot over the years because when I knew a parent was super crazy like Brett Bauer's dad, I just pretended it was all Josh's doing. He was the one to talk to.
He hands out the scholarships. I don't know.
That's and I'm used to that stuff. God knows I've had plenty of angry parents and stuff like that, but you guys know me. There's not a lot that gets me riled up, and I think at some point parents lose interest. They can't get me all crazed and I'm going to scream at them back and that kind of stuff. I'm like, man, this is how I see it. I don't know how to tell you any other way.
I'm telling you right now, we could go break open the old Mitsubishi Eclipse that's sitting there in the driveway that has been for 8 years, hasn't been touched. And in the trunk is the Brett Bowers Hollywood-produced high school highlight film that is hand-painted. It has its own cover. You remember that, Josh? How elaborate his high school tape was?
I do. One of the better ones also, do you remember Ben Haberns?
Yes.
His dad had that file folder and like would give it to you and had like all the clippings of any stories he'd been in and where he was ranked on all the different sites. And like Richard Haburn was like a marketing guy though. So I mean like it was just right in his home base for him to do it that way. But like Mr. Haburn was never overly like he never I don't remember him ever talking with me about rankings. Like he just wanted to talk about Ben.
Yeah, called. I mean, I remember he called me upset, and he was right in the right to do so. But he called me. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember this correctly. Ben gave up football, I think, when he had his neck deal. I think he gave it up before his senior year and didn't play. He could have played another year, but didn't. But I think going into his junior year, he was considered, one of the best centers in the Big 12 especially, and he wasn't on the preseason Remington watch list. And his dad called me all upset because he didn't know how somebody got on that list or whatever. So, I mean, like, you deal with stuff like that from time to time. And I just, made a call to OU, and I said, hey, I got a call from the Haburn family, and they're pretty upset that, he's not on the Remington list. And eventually it got fixed, and he got put on there. But, it's just kind of one of those deals. I think parents sometimes think that you can do more than you really do, and so they complain to you about things because you're the first person that they ran into, when they were going through recruiting, and you were the first person that ever ranked them or wrote about them, and so it's like they just think, well, I'm gonna go talk to this guy because he does everything.
That's the best part is the people that think that, because their son isn't ranked on Rivals or doesn't have a Rivals page or something, that it's like Rivals is out to get them and they're not going to get a scholarship now. It's like Rivals has never offered a scholarship.
No, if you're actually getting letters from multiple schools, you're most likely going to have, it's a chicken and the egg thing. It's like you're going to have a profile page if major colleges are interested in you. Not even if you have a scholarship offer. Like there are so many profiles where kids don't even have major offers from division, but they have profiles because they're legitimate prospects that are hearing from multiple schools.
Like, what's the nicest way you can tell somebody their son just sucks?
There's no nice way to say that. You just have to say, hey, what you really have to say is, look, if he starts getting some offers from Big 12 schools or SEC, or let me know, because then we can start this process. But until that happens, you have to realize that he is not going to have a prospect page.
Chase your dreams, kids, but maybe focus on another sport.
And the other fact that he's a 5'8" nose guard is not helping him.
I've always said if I run a race, if I run a 40, everybody who finishes behind me, just leave. Go away. Get out of the camp. Don't want a page. Then that's like how we'll decide everything. Have like a Rivals rider go do an event, and everybody who finishes behind them, all right, you're done. Go home. That's it. That's our drawing line. Have Josh go out there on the bench press at 225, put up 20 reps, and say, all right, see what you got, boys.
By the way, my favorite parent of all time has to be, what's his name from Selena?
Oh, Jake Rollerson's dad?
Jake Rollerson's dad. Who thought he could sabotage me on the Orange Bloods message board and just lie.
What did he say? Didn't he post something right after Jake?
Oh, no. He said he sat there and told me that that basically he was at OU's camp and that people thought Texas was a done deal. And it was far from that, and that, if he got an Oklahoma offer, it would make it really tough on him. And so then, shortly after that, he committed to Texas, and then he started saying, "Oh, I never said that. That guy's lying." And I was like, "Why would I lie? Like, there's no reason." And it's not like I made a story out of it. I just posted because he was so into message boards that he read what I said on a message board, kind of like in an open post, or it might have even been a scoop. I don't know. But it wasn't like we wrote some big story saying Jake Rollerson, not a done deal to Texas.
I don't think, to tell you how seriously we took Jake Rollerson or how we're worried about him, I think I did a couple of stories about him, and not even about him. He was noted as a guy that was at a camp I was watching. It was like, oh, hey, he's a good-looking athlete, yada, yada. I don't think I ever did a full interview with Jake Rollerson. I don't think once ever. If I'm not doing that, we weren't that serious about covering you.
Josh, if you ever have, like, I don't know, somebody, a source, somebody on the coaching staff say, look, we're not getting this guy. He's not coming to us. He's going to Texas. He's going to LSU or whatever. And then the kid tells you, no, I really like OU. Are you more inclined to trust the coaches when that happens?
Oh, 100%. Guys, I'll give you a great one last year. The kid that I'm going to blank out on his name. That went Hunter Eccles came to OU for an official. Really liked it. Gave OU all these signals that man he was really in. I can even tell you someone that was around him on Sunday of his official visit. He was talking about flipping. I mean, openly talking about it with other recruits, talking about it with coaches. Like it sounded like he was really serious about changing his commitment from USC. And normally you wouldn't think that of a Los Angeles guy, but his mother was from Oklahoma. There was some reason to think maybe that's possible. Well, I go and see him like a month later at the Army game, and I'm doing an interview, and I start asking him some basics, and he's talking, and then all of a sudden I kind of ask him about where things are with OU, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm set on USC. That's where I want to be." You know, he goes, "I loved OU, I really did, but." You know, that's what I want to do. Okay, cool, man. I appreciate the honesty. You know, we went our separate ways, whatever. Well, like 2 weeks later, I start hearing that he's back in touch with OU, and he's like, oh, you know, you guys got to come out here and visit, come see me. You know, my mom wants you to come out here. I'm really serious about OU. I just need some more information. Like, it was just one of those things where, you know, I guess I'll get my cut. He had to shit or get off the pot, and he was never going to do it. So – like, OU just kind of walked on him. Like, he was still trying to get OU to come recruit him more, but it was never going to happen. And OU needed to focus on guys they actually were going to get.
Well, yeah, you know, you mentioned that, and that's something I think this staff, we always talk about how this staff is kind of, you know, evolved in how they do things. I think that was kind of one of the things that's been a long time in the making, that they learned a long time ago. Once they started going national more, they got a pretty good, you know, bullshit sense meter. I mean, like they kind of were able to figure out if a guy was just trying to be nice or wasting their time, but really wasn't going to end up signing with them. And I think they've always had a pretty good grasp on whether or not a kid's wasting their time, especially when it comes to national kids.
Who's got the biggest?
I think.
Okay, it's okay. Go ahead, Josh.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna,
no. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is there a part of the country that has more of a reputation for doing those kinds of things? Is that something you see more in SEC country? Is that something LA kids do? Is guys that kind of I kind of want to build up their offer list and maybe mislead you a little bit?
I think you get that in Florida a lot. I think there's a lot of stuff in Florida that just, you know, almost to where the kids at this point in the game know what they're going to do next February. But between now and then, they're going to tell 6 different schools, hey, man, I love you, and I'm super serious about you. And at some point, you know, it is what it is. And I kind of take what Kerry's saying, but at the same time, I think it took OU a long time to get here.
No. I'm not saying that they've always been that way. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I remember kind of having discussions back with, you know, Kevin Wilson about this kind of thing. And that was kind of when it started. I'd say late 2000s is when they started kind of getting a grasp on it.
I do too. Because there was some, I mean, and even I would say in certain cases, even more recently, like the kid, I'm going to blank on his name, although he comes up all the time because he's the one I always ran about, the 5-star linebacker from Sarah a couple years
ago. John Houston?
Who's that?
John Houston?
Yes, John Houston. That was never, ever, ever coming to OU. And OU was like passing up on good linebackers they had a chance with to recruit John Houston. And you're like, what do you do? That was never going to happen. Okay, he took an official visit. Great. If you're a 5-star at Sarah, with almost no exception, you're going to USC. So I don't know, like stuff like that. But those things to me, kind of along the lines of what you're saying, Kerry, those have become outliers rather than every year there's some story where you're like, what were you doing there?
And you know what helped them? You know what helped them figure that out?
3 years ago.
You know what helped them figure that out? And it wasn't. I think it really was kind of the Bruce Kittle era. Like when you keep oh, well, we're doing really well with this Zach Banner guy. We might get him away from USC. And all of a sudden, you're chasing all these kids that are long shots, and then you don't have anybody. And I think that woke him up to realize, we've, like you said, you've got to shit or get off the pot.
Nice guys finish last.
Well, finishing second, it's impressive, but it doesn't get you anything. Get you fired.
If you ain't first, you're last. And I think it's the bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. I think they realized if you can work on a guy like, Kenyon Freeson and lock down like a Rivals 250 kind of kid and not have to put all your eggs in, a 5-star basket, that might be a better way to go. Josh, where would Julio Jones kind of fall in that spectrum? Is he someone that, that OU that was worth the effort, even though he was probably always going to Alabama, or was that something where they wasted some time and resources? Joshua?
Damn it with this mute button. I just keep hitting the mute button. I got halfway through an answer. No, I think Julio was worth the time because I think people underrate that a little bit. OU, the night before signing day, they still thought they were there with Julio. I mean, they still thought there was a chance. Now, I think they were always pretty realistic that the odds were against them, but probably with the exception of Ruben Randall of an out-of-state major receiver, I think that was the guy they really thought they had the best chance with, and he liked his official. That's one of those fun stories I always love to tell about me interviewing him at Will Rogers, booking a flight that I didn't even want to take so that I could go in the go into the the gate area. Yeah. And go wait for him because I knew what time his flight was and interview him and his teammate who is also a longtime NFL guy. So that's kind of a crazy story. But, I mean, there are I think Julio was a good example. But to me, Kerry, I was sitting here looking. I was like, what time frame are we talking about? Look at 2012, that coaching staff. You had Josh Heupel, Jay Norvell, Bobby Jack Wright, Tim Kish, Jackie Shipp, James Patton, and Bruce Kittle. How the hell were you landing any elite guys? I don't mean to bag on. I like a lot of those guys. I really like, but
it's kind of like I've made this analogy before.
Those are not elite recruiters.
It's like when you look at like Eddie, when you go back and you look at like a Cubs roster from like 8 years ago, and it's almost like it's in that. It's like that moment in the movie Major League with the Asian groundskeeper guys. Like, who are these bleeping guys?
Yeah, like I love Brant Brown, but I like Chris Bryant a lot too.
There's this. It takes you years later to realize, because at the time you're convincing yourself, oh, these guys are good. Like, we can win with these guys. Yeah, and then you look at it 10 years later, it's like I look at some of those Royals lineups. Oh, my God. It's like
Kosuke Fukudomi was really good, but I love Kyle Schwarber.
but yeah, I mean, that's when you look at that OU staff, you're like, what the hell were they thinking? But what were we thinking?
You didn't realize it at the time. It's one of those things you only realize in retrospect. People thought Jay Norvell was a great recruiter for a period of time. People thought Jackie Shipp was a great recruiter for a period of time.
Jay Norvell could go out and identify a kid that was highly rated and bring. I think it would have been the same problem that you would have had with Jerry Montgomery eventually, is that he would have gone out and said, these are the guys that everyone says are the best players, and he would have gone out and gotten a good amount of them. But Jay Norvell never said no to a highly ranked kid.
Yeah.
And that was part of his problem. He never made. And look, we were the ones ranking him high, but there's got to be an evaluation process that says, okay, maybe Deron Neal is not a difference maker, no matter what people say about him or how he's ranked.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add on Julio Jones. I've always heard that Julio Jones got a car and never
and kept driving
it to Tuscaloosa. But that's
an urban legend that has been around for a while.
A failed Bagman moment in Oklahoma history is brought to you by.
That'd be great to show, like during timeouts, during games. This failed Bagman moment.
We gave him $500,000.
We could do the like Chappelle Show version when he did the hookup, great moments in hookup history. Bagman.
That would be great.
No, but Josh, you were.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, no, kind of just what you were saying about Norvell, Kerry. To me, the issue, and you're right in that, but I think it was also, we're going to get 5'6'5" guys in this class and zero slot receivers. Cool, no problem. Like, that doesn't work. You've got to have some balance, because that class where, and people can go on about it, they were really close to getting Dorial Green-Beckham. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But they were going to get him. They were going to get Courtney Gardner. And there was somebody else
Derek
that was another big outside guy, and you're like, you run a spread. Where are you going to put all this size? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And to be fair, it's kind of the same conversation I'm having right now. Like, Oklahoma's got a whole bunch of big bodies, and they look good for a couple more in this upcoming class. But where are the slot guys? You can love those big outside guys, but that's not really the offense you run.
No, you're right.
The Deron Neal stuff to me is always interesting, because his highlight tape, his film was explosive. I mean, he looked like a game changer in every facet of the game. Return game, he took handoffs, he was a receiver, and then he came to Oklahoma and he carved out a role for himself eventually, but it never saw the same explosion you saw of him in high school. And I guess that's like a wake up call for what you're seeing in high school does not always translate into college level. You have to consider competition, all that stuff. But
I remember him
he looked good in high school.
I remember him at the U.S. Army games, and him, everybody feeling like he was a little disappointing out at practices there.
And people always say, "Oh, you guys put too much stuff on that." A guy like Deron Neal, that's the first time he really went up against elite guys.
Yeah,
and you can't overscore that. Now, sometimes the guys, like, okay, I got used to it. Now I'm back on my game. But you can't ignore when a guy, okay, that's the first time he's faced an elite cornerback in his whole life, and he looks like he's overwhelmed. Like, it happens all the time, and we see these elite guys, and then they go out and don't do much in college, and you're like, well, we kind of saw that coming, but we didn't react to it. But at the same time, there'll be a guy, and we do react, and then he comes back, and he's fine. So it's so hard to know what to take seriously about that. But, yeah, with Deron, I wasn't sold on him until his senior film. Like, I liked his junior stuff and thought he was pretty good, but I'm with what you're talking about, Kerry. Like, he wasn't – I wasn't like, oh, he's amazing. He's so much better than Sterling Shepard. I didn't see that.
He
and
was
then as a
also
senior, you're like, damn, he's really good.
He was also maybe the greatest example of a guy that was just obscenely profane on Twitter. Like, his Twitter account was insane. Like – horrible things. And I just remember, like, by the time he left OU, like, he had grown up so much as a person.
Yeah.
Because when he was in high school, every other word was a cuss word on his Twitter account. And I just thought to myself, this guy is never going to make it at OU.
He came from a rough area of St. Louis, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect example of somebody that went into college, probably a boy, and turned into a man.
Yeah. And you know what? You know who was responsible for that probably more than anybody was Sterling Shepard.
Yeah. And they still, to this day, they came to I forgot what game it was this year. Might have been the Ohio State game, but they were together. They came and they still hang out. It's kind of like the perfect marriage, because Sterling wanted to be hard.
Yeah.
And Deron really was hard, and they kind of met in the middle.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Went together.
Eddie, that's one of those areas you always talk about, like, oh, let's take these dudes from Waco to South Dallas. Yeah, take them to East St. Louis.
Oh, boy.
That's no place to play, man. That's a serious joint.
I have played in East St. Louis, and it's everything that you're describing.
All right. Spring practice is starting. It's spring break. Bob Stoops is going to have his press conference on Monday. Should get a lot of good stuff out of that. Like you said, Josh, it has really been locked down. Everybody's kind of been taking their time. They're getting their final breaths before they really get going. It's going to be really interesting because we have so much. I pulled it up earlier, Eddie. We have so much media availability.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Over the next 2 weeks, almost every day, which I love. I mean,
that's going to be awesome.
It's going to be totally awesome. But we'll start with Bob Stoops on Monday. So there's going to be a lot to talk about in the next podcast in terms of team news. But obviously, we've been out to Pro Day. We talked about that, seeing some of the guys. But I think Rodney Anderson is probably the guy that you want to know how much contact is he going to do, how much are you going to let him do. And he's a guy that's been out for so long. I think Bob should maybe suspend that rule about, not your starters don't get much contact at running back.
There's just so many question marks going into this spring. It's like I don't want to say it's the biggest spring of Bob Stoops era, but
there's a lot of knowns, but
it has the biggest question marks at probably a season in which, if those question marks are filled, you can compete for a national title. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. They have a foundation with Baker Mayfield and that offensive line and what they have returning on defense that you think, okay, this could be a playoff type of team. But then you look at skill position. I mean, running back and wide receiver, you have really no clue who those guys are going to be when they run out on the field against UTEP. So that's kind of one of those are the positions where I think people can see talent a little more easily. So that's going to be really interesting to see who kind of jumps out at running back and jumps out at receiver, and who are going to be the playmakers that take over for Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine and Dede Westbrook.
And I think,
guys,
go ahead, Josh.
Hang on. Which one do you think's a bigger concern, running back or receiver? Like, which one do you feel like that'll probably work itself out, and which one are you really unsure about?
I'd say receiver.
I'm going to say running back because Baker Mayfield is good enough where he can kind of work around some of the deficiencies they have at receiver.
As good of OU's offensive line is, can that I guess not take care of everything for a running back, but I mean,
dude, OU's offensive line was great in 2004, but they didn't have Adrian Peterson, they had Kewan Jones, and it was not pretty at times.
Yeah.
There's been years also where they've had nobody at receiver, and they've struggled those years. I remember in 2009, that receiving core was just dreadful outside of Ryan Broyles, and they had trouble.
No, it was terrible.
They had trouble just completing passes, and
not completing. They couldn't. They had receivers that couldn't catch the damn ball.
Right, and so I remember. I think it was
DeJuan Miller being at the top of that list.
It was a Jay Norvell point, I think, but he had a statistic that said a drop is more likely going to result in a punt for your offense than a holding penalty. So. My first instinct was kind of to go with Eddie there. Like, if those receivers don't come through, then that's a problem. But I happen to have more confidence in the
They're
talent
way
in those guys,
better
though.
than they were in 2009 at receiver.
Yeah, I mean Marquise Brown and Cedarian Lamb are so talented. I mean, you don't know exactly what they're going to be at OU, but I have faith in those guys' talent to
Mark
pull it off.
Andrews. I mean, look, I'm not sold on Dahu Green. But Michael Jones, I mean, I think he could be a guy that makes a huge leap.
Nick Basquin.
Sure.
He had to get his North plug in there.
He didn't even make my two deep. I think he was on Eddie's two deep.
Yeah, I had him in there.
Look, I'm not buying on Jordan Smallwood either. And we'll see what happens if A.D. Miller is still around. But look, Jeffrey Mead has made a lot of progress, and I mean, I know we all get sick of him saying, Jeffrey Mead is about ready to explode because they've been saying that for 2 years. But he had actual progress on the field last year. He made actual improvement.
How important is this spring for the guys that are returning as opposed to a guy like Cedarian Lamb, Charleston Rambo? Can those guys? I know that Josh. I think Josh and Joe both had him in there too deep. But can Lamb be a guy that really? I mean, if somebody doesn't step up this spring, if somebody doesn't have a good camp, is he a guy that will take a job?
I think so. I mean,
he's that good, I think.
Josh, you've seen him more than I have, but from tape, the first tape I saw him, I think I had him as my top ranked recruit. You had. I really am a buyer in his talent.
There's no reason he can't be a 600, 700 yard receiver this year. Like there is every availability to him, and Jeff Mead is Quentin Chaney to me. Like, he's going to have moments where you're like, oh, man, look at all that talent. And then for a month, you forget he's even on the roster. So I'm done buying on that. Same with Dahu Green and A.D. Miller. If I had to pick one of those three, I think Dahu'd probably be the way I lean just a little bit based on
You're a fool.
Just what I believe is their talent. But Jeff's soft. He's always going to have trouble if anybody's physical with him. Like, it just I'm not a buyer.
He's surprisingly honest.
I'm trying to pull up
too.
stats right now.
Jeff will tell you that he struggles to make the easy catches. Routine catches I struggle with, but I'll make the crazy acrobatic ones. And I appreciate the honesty, but that's a telling admission that you struggle to make the routine catches, and your job is to make catches.
Yeah, not exactly so.
Eddie can back me up on this. There are a few people I like talking to more than Jeff Mead. Jeff Mead's a super sharp kid to talk to.
Great.
It is bizarre that Michael Jones had more catches than Jeff Mead last year. Because Michael Jones disappeared about halfway through the season.
Didn't he have a 7-catch game somewhere in there?
Well, the Iowa State game was his best game. But then he had that really big catch. Was that in Bedlam where he's going across the middle?
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure.
And then he had, but Jeff Mead did have 3 touchdowns last year. Michael Jones didn't have any. Nick Basquin had 2. I mean, actually, his 3 touchdowns for receivers was 3rd best on the team.
And they were impressive touchdowns.
Or 2nd best for receiver.
I mean, those Iowa State touchdowns were impressive. And
or 3rd best.
The catch he had against Baylor where he made a one-handed grab, plucked it away from 2 defenders was impressive. I think he had 3 of our top 10 plays of the year from Scoop HD.
I couldn't disagree with Josh more, and I was half joking there, but only half. I don't think Dahu Green's ever going to do anything.
See, I like that. I like Dahu. I think he's going to at some point get it together. But if I had to pick between him, A.D. Miller, and even Mead, I might take Dahu.
See, I think A.D. Miller has the best talent out of those guys, but last year I've lost all confidence in what he can do on the field because it just didn't happen, and I don't know why because I think he has all the tools.
Well, and it was so weird with him last year. I don't know what was going on, but there's something on the mental side of it for Dahu that's just not there. I mean, how many games, Eddie, did he dress but didn't, or he didn't dress but he seemed to be fine?
Well, he had those. I mean, was it concussion? Because he didn't suit up for the first.
But he would even come on the road wearing his jersey and stuff.
Yeah, it was weird. He had a weird year. There's no doubt about that.
I guess I'm as down on Dahu as Josh is on Jeff Mead.
Well, I mean, but this is what we're talking about, guys. Like when we say, yeah, there's no reason Lamb can't have a huge year. Because who are you buying in front of him?
That's a great point.
I mean, you can say like, oh yeah, he's got some things he's got to work on.
On the outside, definitely. They need help on the outside, and if you're a difference maker, you can come in and play right away. And the thing about it is, you're competing against Jeff Mead. If you're Sedarian Lamb, and you're going to say, oh, he's a freshman, he needs to get bigger, stronger. Jeff Mead's not bigger or stronger, so it's not going to be a case where you can't come in and beat a guy out because he's more physically developed than you are.
Josh, have you given a comparison for Sedarian Lamb? What his game reminds you of? What that frame is like? What kind of player does he remind you of?
I've worked at it, Joe, and I've never found one that just screams at me. Like I think, and he's a totally different body type because the guy I'm going to compare him to in this, he was so much broader and wider and more physical. But his game reminds me of Des Bryant. That's the way he plays. Like he uses his length. He's great in the air. He's just really natural chasing the ball. Is not a 4.4 guy, but has plenty of speed, has great feet. But at the same time, just like I'm saying, he has more length. He's like Des was probably 6'1"-ish, and Sedarian's a pretty legit 6'2.5", 6'3", and is a longer guy, but he's not going to body a guy up like Des Bryant or run over a smaller corner like Des Bryant might. So, I mean, like, and I always hate using a big name like that because everybody's like, oh, he's saying there's a long way to go before I'm ready to say he's that kind of player. But just his skill set and the way he plays, that's the kind of guy he reminds me of. And like I said, I don't know how you keep Lamb off the field. And probably the guy that goes forgotten in all of this is probably Charleston Rambo. Charleston Rambo is a really good player and is far more highly thought of in my eyes coming in than anybody in front of him. And he's an accomplished route runner. He's much more mentally ready than Sedarian Lamb is. I just don't know that he has those scary skills that Lamb has. And I think that's where Lamb is just so good, it's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
Well, we'll see. With the transfers and everything, I mean, that's going to play into it as well.
Yeah.
But, I just think offensively, Baker is going to help you overcome some of those shortcomings. I mean, they'll find a running back, and hopefully it's Rodney Anderson because, I mean, that kid deserves some stardom after all the injuries he's been through since he's been at Oklahoma. And then defensively for me, I mean, obviously the defensive line – seeing if guys can really make that next leap. Guys like, and not so much like Gallimore for me, but guys like Devontae Lampkin, can Q Overton kind of make that jump a little bit. They've got 4 guys there that they can play, and I think they trust in, and then you got Romar coming back. But can they hold up against the run? And everybody keeps asking. I saw some thread on the board. Everybody was complaining about, being confused about the defensive scheme that they're running. I still really think with Caleb Kelly out there that they're going to run some version of a 3-4. But I just think in this day and age, it's probably hurting. And Josh, you could speak to this better than anybody. I think it probably hurts them a little bit finding defensive tackles when it's thought that they run a base 3-4.
It's really tough because, people don't understand, that nose, all you're doing is eating blocks. You're never going to get stats. You're never going to be the guy that most people notice. Guys that sit around and watch film all day, they'll know who you are, but nobody else is going to know anything about you. And that's tough for kids, especially, we talked about it in the Lonzo Ball world that we live in. That's what this is. These kids want to be known and have hype. And people will say, well, look at Alabama. Alabama lives in a world-class recruiting base, and they've had all this success. They can tell these kids, you can be the next Jonathan Allen. You can be this next guy.
Well, they can come and get an Ashawn Robinson in Texas.
Exactly. They can make that happen because also there's a pretty good likelihood you're going to win a national championship while you're at Alabama. So, that's a lot to sell a kid, and it can kind of overcome some of the stuff you're talking about. But you're right. It's a tougher sell. But I think when you start looking at the defense, who are the guys that you can't take off the field? That you want, if you're in your best defensive grouping, who's going to be out there? Caleb Kelly?
Yeah.
Obo.
Neville Gallimore?
Stephen Parker.
Who's that?
Stephen Parker on defense. In the back end.
You're talking about guy, and with what you just said, Kerry, it's pretty hard to get Caleb Kelly on the field in a 4-3 alignment if you're not doing something kind of funky.
Or if you're putting him in a strong side backer position, which is not featuring him at all.
Exactly. The only way you can do it aside from that is if you're kind of doing an eagle look and you've got somebody right there lined up over a tight end. You're going to have to do something a little unique with Caleb Kelly to best use him in a 4-3 scheme.
And maybe it's even just going back to Dan Cody, Larry Burdine kind of spinner stuff. That was technically a 4-3 defense that they had a defensive end stand up that basically made him a 3-4. It's really, everybody gets so hung up on putting a number on a scheme on this defense. They're going to be multiple up front. They're going to at times look like a 5-2. They're at times going to look like a 3-4. They're going to have defensive tackles on the field. They're going to have stand-up linebackers. They're going to have defensive ends. DJ Ward's not going anywhere either. He is a guy that fits multiple systems. So, and he's been asked to do a lot of stuff since he's been here. Now, is he a superstar? No, but he's a good college football player. And I would just tell people to stop worrying about. That's why I haven't really addressed it. So it's very complicated to talk about this, but don't worry about if it's a 4-3 or a 3-4 or a 5-2 or 4-2-5 or whatever. You're going to have Stephen Parker up on the line of scrimmage some, even though I think he could be a great free safety. They just like his versatility there. So everybody's going to be all over the place. But at the end of the day, like you say, Josh, they're going to put guys in the best position to make plays. They're going to put Caleb Kelly in better positions to make plays than if he was a strong side linebacker.
And that amoeba front is kind of where the evolution of defense is going. If you watch things like the Falcons' defense last few years, where the offense can't be quite sure of what your alignment is on a play-to-play basis. That's kind of where the evolution of defense is going. And the defense played better with Caleb Kelly in the lineup last year in a multiple front, but a basic 3-man
just like
front.
they played better with Devontae Bond, last year.
Right. I think they allowed 30-plus points per game without Caleb Kelly starting, and with Caleb Kelly starting, they allowed fewer than 20 points per game. That defense was working, at least working much better with Caleb Kelly in the lineup. I'm not sure if you have to change too much. I guess it makes sense if you're trying to help your recruiting pitch because, someone like Jordan Phillips, who played nose tackle in this system, ended up being a second-round pick. But at OU, he only had 3.5 career sacks. So I get what you're saying about that position. It's just not going to be a stat builder. But you can still make it to the NFL being a nose tackle at OU. Like I said, he was a second-round pick. It's just about what kind of style you want to be playing.
Yeah, I don't. As a fan, you shouldn't care what they run as long as they don't give up 10 yards on 3 plays.
Is that kind of like I mean, this whole thing, it's become like, it's almost like rotisserie baseball or something. It's like the nerds have to be able to say, oh, they're running a 3-4, but they extend out on the edge. And it's just like...
just like, being a true loser about it.
Oh, that's not a little harsh, but I just mean, it's nerdy.
It's very
You're being nerdy.
You realize I'm a football nerd. You guys are kind of crushing me right now.
Josh, you're
fine.
a nerd.
I love talking that crap.
But you know what? You don't go on the board griping about why can't we nail down what alignment this defense is running.
Those are the same people that are going to call in and ask, Al, what time does OU play on Saturday?
Oh, God.
It's the same person. That's the same mold.
Not the same person.
Same mold.
I give the alignment people more credit than that guy. A lot more.
Yeah, for sure. If you can immediately find an answer from Google, then you know don't. That's bad. But Kerry, I think, and it's kind of what Joe was talking about. There is something to be said for some mystery in what you're doing. And especially.
I agree.
I think it's very interesting that OU has been so upfront with, hey, we're going to do this. And I understand it from a recruiting perspective, but I also think there's some gamesmanship with other teams in the league who think they know what OU is going to throw at them, and then they're going to do some different things that maybe they're not prepared for.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, you look at like Oklahoma State, the way they attack their defense. Nobody else had really done that with their, what do they call it, their pony backs or whatever. With Jarwin and Veach, it's just running a diamond with two tight ends as the fullbacks. But I mean, that when people have enough time to look at your defense over a few year period, it hasn't changed. They're going to be able to have some success from time. And I think they're probably worried a little bit about Baylor coming in here with a system that's going to be designed to attack fronts and things like that with their run game. It's just. Coaches are never comfortable having all their cards out on the table.
I'd say also probably
and they shouldn't be.
The fan base worry about the formations and what OU's running to. I think probably goes back to a lot of those same people don't have any faith in Mike Stoops and his ability to call defense. True.
But I'd say this: tell me one great player since Mike Stoops has been here that he has failed to put in a position to make plays. Eric Stryker is not an NFL football player, and they found a way to put Eric Stryker in a position to where he was considered one of the best defensive players in the country.
Yeah,
and he was so out of his league trying to make it in the NFL because we all knew he was a guy that played. If he had been 265 and 6'5", he would have been all pro in the NFL with his motor.
Devontae Bond put Stryker's motor in Devontae Bond's body.
But Eric Stryker was 6'1", 215.
Yeah.
Or 6'2", 250.
I've said the difference between Eric Stryker and Vic Beasley is why Oklahoma's winning Sugar Bowls and Clemson's winning national titles.
Bastard.
That's the difference. You're having a guy who's an elite college pass rusher, but he's not going to be an NFL guy, while Clemson's got Vic Beasley, who's going to go lead the NFL in sacks one day. And so it's just about getting those guys in your system when you run a defense. I mean, Mike Stoops has had his problems, but he's also had some good days since he's returned. 2 years ago, that defense was pretty good, and at the end of last year, it was pretty good. It's just about I don't think they've had the horses on defense to be a national title kind of team, and
no, they haven't.
They've been moving more in that direction, though. So that is the positive sign. You have guys like Neville Gallimore and Devontae Lampkin up front now that do give you at least an elite level type front, but they're still not there. I still think they're not quite there yet. Caleb Kelly's good.
Who is class of 2017 potential instant impact guy in your minds? Anybody, go.
On defense?
Yeah.
I think Justin Broyles can.
Troy James? I think Troy James is a bull.
I think Troy James would probably be my pick. I would lean toward Addison Gums, but if they're legitimately going to this four-man front, and again, we could get into that whole thing of what that means and how they're going to use people. Gums makes a ton of sense, but with the way they want to do that, I think Troy James is a potential 3 technique because, you could talk about Neville, and Neville makes sense as a 3 tech, but who else? Lampkin's too big. Lampkin's a 1. He just is. And so you go, Overton, he's a 1.
Yep.
Romar, he's a 1. So who's that next guy?
You'd
at
have to
3?
spin down
you don't have that
DJ
ready-made
Ward
guy.
probably, and he's not. I would say he's slimmed down a little bit, but maybe that's just because he's in better shape because he's lost a spleen and all that stuff since he's been here.
What's interesting to me, guys, do you think, say Lampkin comes in this spring and they feel good about him. They feel like, okay, he's made that step. He's ready to be a true contributor. We've got Overton. We know we trust him. He's healthy. Do you think there's any thought of letting Romar trim down a little bit and move over to that 3? Because to me, that's where he's better. Because he's so people don't understand what a good athlete Matt Romar is. But he's having to play huge for his body type.
He's so big, though. I don't know how much.
No,
he can
I
trim
know
down.
he is, but I mean, he's like Kerry. I mean, you've stood next to him. I have not. He's probably 6'1", maybe.
Yeah, I don't think he's quite as tall as I am. I think I've stood next to him. He's just like a hair under me.
Yeah, so I mean, like he could be. It's just he's carrying a lot of weight for that frame. Now he's a big guy naturally. You're absolutely right. But he's a guy that played running back in high school, like at a good. I mean, and had some success doing it. So he's a good athlete. And I just wonder, like, could you slide him over there, and all of a sudden you get a pretty athletic, and talk about a rotation. If you get a Romar that's moving well and Neville Gallimore, those are your 2-3 techniques. That's pretty serious.
Yeah, I think. I don't think he can though. I just don't. I don't think.
No, I don't. It probably won't happen. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, because you're a nerd.
Well, and that's
This is the crap I think about. That's what I spend my time.
That's where all their
thinking
talent
about.
is defensive tackle. All right, so you have Romar and Overton and Lampkin
I mean, the
and
bigger
those
question.
guys, Gallimore
Look,
in
the
one
bigger,
room. How do you
we
get them
can
on the
just
field?
stop talking about defensive tackle. That's not their worry. The worry is, can John Michael Terry come in and be a middle linebacker? I mean, that's
Or can Ricky DeBerry make the move to middle linebacker?
Right.
yeah. I'm after seeing
Take your
him.
bets, guys. Who you got?
Give me John Michael Terry, man.
I'll take
I'm taking
DeBerry.
Terry. I think he's
DeBerry.
I think he's going to be really good.
Really,
I do. I think he's going to be really
because
really
right
good.
now, and until I hear or see some more, I'm going with Emmanuel Beal again. I know people don't want to hear that.
That's the boring one. That's the one where nothing changes.
You know, the one thing you can say for Beal, he is the one guy that in that shift in the front, it's better for him. He makes a lot more sense in a 4-3 than he does in a 3-4.
Yeah, because he's small.
It's funny how much shit the Lackawanna guys took last year coming in, and all of a sudden, I mean,
Well, Ashton
I'm not gonna
Julius was the highest rated recruit. He hadn't done jack squat.
Yeah, he didn't do anything. And but the
the
two
Looney
linebackers,
Tunes or
the Looney Tunes, I mean, all they did was play well. They didn't do anything great, but they didn't do anything terrible.
We got to throw Capri Doucette in the mix there
Yeah,
too. And I don't know. I mean, they're going to try him inside some.
Yeah.
So.
And like Eddie said, they didn't set the world on fire, but when Oklahoma needed linebackers, they came in and played capable. Capri Doucette had a big sack against TCU. I mean,
One of the best plays of the year was it Beal that had that shot the gap in the red zone? I forgot what game that was. Was that TCU?
Beal makes play. I mean, he's a playmaker. He's
Bedlam?
just not.
Bedlam.
He's not big enough to do
Yeah.
it on a consistent basis.
Beal's feast or famine.
Yeah.
You're going to get a great thing, and then you're going to see something that hurts you. It's just the way that is.
And then really the only other question is, Sunderland or
Houghton.
Houghton. Yeah.
I ran into Will. Did you see Will at Pro Day, Kerry or Joe? Either of you?
I think I ran
didn't see
into him.
That guy. I mean, it seems like all he does is work out, but he is humongous right now.
Hatari Bird level of
He makes Satari Bird look very small.
Wow.
Like I think Will. I don't think there's probably a bigger fan than anybody than Josh. I mean, Josh, this is kind of Will's time to shine, isn't it?
It is. I mean, Will's one of those guys that, when OU signed him, I thought he would take time for the mental side to catch up. Will was coming. He knew what he knew, but there was a lot he was going to have to process at OU. So you knew that was going to take him a little time. And he's such I mean, Eddie, you talk about how big he is, but he's so long in his frame. He's kind of, and so it was going to take a little while for him to physically get there. And now, I mean, to me, he has to go in with the edge, right? I mean, every time Will was on the field last year, good things happened.
No, just turn on the Texas tape and see what he did when he came in. I think that's why everybody was hung up on him.
Yeah, that's really what you were basing it on. I mean, I realize there's not a lot more to go on than that. But with Houghton, I was a huge Houghton fan out of high school.
Me too.
I haven't seen him make a play yet.
He reacts slowly on the field, it looks like to me. In high school, he flew around, but at OU, he just looks tentative out there. He looks slow in his breaks. He just doesn't look like he's sure what he's doing. And when Will was on the field, I mean, that Texas game, he plays confidently. He flies around, and I'll take that stuff for a safety more than anything. Guy that just trusts what he sees and reacts. And I think Will's the guy there, and I think it's going to be him, Stephen Parker, and Jordan Thomas, and Jordan Parker. Those are going to be your defensive backs.
With Sunderland, I think it counts for something, and maybe it was a lucky guess, but the play that he made on the goal line against Texas, he said that it went back to film study and just knowing the play that was coming, and I think that counts for something, if nothing.
We'll see. I'm
not a fan.
I'm not. No, I'm a huge Will Sunderland fan. I don't believe
that way, Sexton will call.
I don't believe that it was just like
night and
a
day
mistake
difference
by the coaching staff that he didn't play more as the year went on. I mean, I think there's probably some issues of either recognition or study habits or whatever, mental. I don't know, but I don't know. It seems funny to me that he did become a bigger part of the defense.
The Ahmad Thomas stuff that people
because after that game, Mike Stoops told me, he said, we've got to find a way to get Will Sunderland more involved, which says to me that they went into practices and tried to give him more, and he just didn't handle it well. And it probably made his head start swimming. He probably regressed a little bit, and maybe he can use this spring to kind of start getting that down. And if he does, I think he'll be a hell of a player.
It makes me wonder, Kerry, did they come down to a question of, okay, we've got to find a way, and it's either we've only got one position we can play with here, and we've got to choose. Is it going to be Caleb Kelly on the field, or is it going to be Will Sunderland on the field?
That's a possibility. I think the other possibility is, how in the world could we I think that's exactly it. No, I really do. I'm going to stop myself. I mean, the only other option was taking Ahmad Thomas off the field, which I think a lot of people said, yes, do that.
Do it.
But you're not going to take a team captain off the field.
Yeah. And, we've all kind of had our thoughts about Ahmad and how he played as a safety. But, I mean, he put up numbers at OU's Pro Day that were respectable numbers for a safety. I thought he had a good day.
He put up numbers at Pro Day that made me think, why weren't you better?
That's a completely fair point. But there's also things like he had. I mean, I don't know. This probably can't weigh in your decision making, but at some point it has to, at least on a subconscious level. He just had a kid. You're gonna bench him while he just had a kid, been starting for you for 4 years, and as a team
if he's not helping you, you better, or you're gonna get your ass fired.
Take away your money if they bench you. I mean,
Joe,
in their mind it does.
If you have a child and go to sleep on us, fired.
You hippie. Joe, once again,
this ain't show friends.
Trying to infect our show with his hippiness.
I was just saying maybe subconsciously, that's all.
Fake news.
Can we talk about the haircut comment yesterday? We need to get to that at the end. I thought that was one of Joe's stronger contributions to our group chat.
Oh, about how you can't ever miss a haircut if you don't get one?
If you don't actually get your haircut, I thought that was great. I gotta give up a little love there.
Josh used to love having the floppy hair back in the day.
I did. I miss it. If I and it's, married guys know how this is. Like, it's not that Tiffany would tell me you can't do that, because who the hell is she to tell me I can't cut my hair? But the constant conversations about it are just not worth it to me. Like, I loved your hair when it was short. It was so nice. So do you remember how easy it was to dry and keep? God, I don't care enough to fight this fight, so I'll keep it short. That's fine.
Okay, we got to start wrapping this thing up. Spring, like I said, getting ready to start next week. Bob Stoops will have his press conference on Monday. I know you guys are probably listening to this on the weekend. Then first practice will be on Tuesday. Eddie and I will get to go out and shoot some video and photo. And then we'll be interviewing players pretty much every day that they're practicing for the next 2 weeks. Josh, you got the scoop out early this morning. Appreciate that. Really, the note that you led with was on TJ Pledger. Let's talk a little bit about that.
TJ Pledger, for those that don't listen, I always have to give these because Carrie tells me I can't assume that people know things. TJ Pledger, top 5 running back in the country, top 40 overall player in the country.
Man, you're good.
from IMG Academy in Florida is IMG has their spring break next week. He is using his spring break, or at least part of it, to come visit Oklahoma. Now, I did not get that from TJ. I got that from talking to some various sources, and TJ wouldn't exactly say when he's going to visit, because the belief has been, for me for a while, whenever he took that next trip, he was going to commit to Oklahoma. And I think TJ's trying to keep that a little under wraps. Now, maybe he'll shock me and he doesn't pull the trigger, but I think if TJ Pledger makes it to campus like I expect next week, that probably by the time we're podcasting again next week, he will be on Oklahoma's commitment list.
Ooh. That's some
that's my expectation.
Why they call it the
stuff.
Sooner Scoop?
Which would then mean Oklahoma in 2018 would have quarterback Cameron Rising. At a left tackle, they'd have Bray Walker. And at running back, they'd have TJ Pledger. Which,
Will they have a Lincoln Riley?
that's a heck of a foundation for an offense.
Wow.
Yes.
Then Debbie Downer had to come in.
Say, just ruined the moment.
Wah, wah.
All right, Josh, so Pledger, how does he fit in with some of the guys that OU's brought in recent memory? Where does he compare to you as far as a recruit, like a Joe Mixon level or a Trey Sermon level? Where does he kind of fit in that hierarchy?
He's the most talented back OU will have signed since Mixon, in my opinion. He is and I think more than anything, he really fits OU well. He's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's going to do something. He's very good out in space. He's a one-cut guy. I mean, like he does a lot of things that really fit OU to a T. And to the kid's credit, I think that's why he zeroed in on OU so early on. He saw it. He understands. And I also think a guy that we don't talk a lot about in this podcast that did a really good job is Jay Boulware. I mean, he's been on this kid since early. He identified 3 or 4 backs around the country and really hammered. He figured out Pledger was a guy he had a really good shot at early on, zeroed in on him, and now it looks like he's going to, reap the benefit of that. So I think he's a really good back. I think he complements what OU has, because he's not a downhill power guy like, Trey Sermon. I've talked about Trey Sermon being a great receiver, but Trey Sermon's 6'2", 210. I mean, he's a guy that can make some hay between the tackles. So he's a guy that will complement him and Rodney Anderson and some of the other players that are already there very well, in my opinion. I think a really good example of a compliment is Kennedy Brooks, who is a north-south, pure kind of runner, and Pledger can be that guy where you could do a 2-back system, and I think he'd play pretty well off of Brooks.
Almost like Alvin Kamara at Tennessee. Is that what kind of what I'm getting from you?
I think there's some comparison there, yeah.
By the way, and we're going to wrap this thing up here, and I want to just get your last few thoughts on recruiting here, but just TJ Pledger, the way you're talking about him, it's really interesting to me watching what's going on like with Adrian Peterson in the NFL, that it seems like we're getting into an era where if you cannot catch the ball out of the backfield, like your value now, it's almost like the days of having a running back and running that offense that Minnesota ran with Adrian Peterson. I don't know that we're going to be seeing that type of offense again, other than maybe wherever Les Miles ends up. But it just seems like anymore, if you can't catch the ball as a running back, you really don't have a lot of value at any level of football.
Unless you are Adrian Peterson and you are that big and strong and fast, and somebody could say, you know what, we're going to run it 25, 30 times a game with this guy, and he'll still put up 200 yards. Like, you better be that special if you can't catch the ball at this point, because that's just the direction the game is going. And that's why we talked about for weeks about how Joe Mixon was going to be so tempting to NFL teams, because he's so freaking gifted as a receiver that he fits the NFL game as well as any back to come out in years.
You know what will test that more than anything is if Mixon goes before Fournette in the draft.
Oh, my God. There will be some people that might go into cardiac arrest if that happens.
It should happen.
I'm not saying it shouldn't, but
if you're just talking about talent, it should happen.
Yeah.
Take the off-field thing out of it. How high does Joe Mixon go in this draft?
Top 10?
God, I think
that's possible. I think it's completely possible.
People are literally arguing about whether you take him or Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
If he doesn't have the off-field stuff.
Yep. Oh, I think he'd go over Cook. I think he's a better receiver and he doesn't have the health issues.
I don't know. I love that burst that Cook has.
Dalvin Cook. I'm front and center in his fan club. I really am. But it's just like I said, Mixon is so perfect for the NFL right now.
I think Cook's a better runner though than Mixon is.
Yeah, I think he's more instinctive. He's more natural. I think Joe, it's what we always get into. We talk about him as an inside runner. Joe's so gifted, he can do some things that he probably shouldn't.
And I think he'll get better as an inside runner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Joe I think back of guys like Marshall Faulk or something like that. He could have a career like that if he finds the right place with the right quarterback where he can be a guy who would get you 1,000 yards out of the backfield and 1,000 yards receiving. And that's just, I don't know, for an NFL team – eventually, I mean, it's gotten to the point where we know people are going to overlook the off-the-field stuff, and he's going to get drafted. He's going to get drafted. So at that point, the teams have to start weighing, well, look, if he's going to be playing in the NFL anyway, I want to be the one that has that talent on my team. And I think that's kind of where we're getting to as the draft approaches for him.
You say
exactly.
He needs a good
how far are we going to fall on our sword for this thing?
Exactly.
He needs a good quarterback, but he also needs a good offensive line. If you don't get drafted into a team that has a decent offensive line, you're not going to do anything in this league.
Sam has proven that.
Yeah, I mean, look at any quarterback. I mean, it's almost in a really effed up way. It might help Mixon that he's not going to go in the top 10 because he can go to a team that's going to probably be pretty decent, depending on what team it is. I mean,
by the way, I wonder, the Vikings signing the Raiders back,
Latavius Murray,
if now that Mixon is not really a priority for the Vikings, that could hurt him. If they didn't get Murray, there's probably a good chance that they would have taken him as high as anybody would have taken him.
Yeah, which would have been their first pick isn't until 48.
Yeah.
The Broncos just met with him too. And
I'm going to call it now. Raiders at 24.
I could see it.
Hometown kid.
He fits. Hometown kid. He fits their needs. He comes behind a great offensive lineman. He's got a quarterback. I mean, like that. You talk about like Ezekiel Elliott last year with the Cowboys. Like walking in, you're like, he's going to be the rookie of the year. Like, there wouldn't even be. I don't think there'd be an argument.
And then he has Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree on the outside. I mean,
I mean that's ridiculous. The weapons he'd have available. But to me, if you'd have told me a month ago, I would have thought that. I don't know that he'll be there at 24.
I've said this. To me, the Giants at 23 is just a glaring. Holy crap! If that happens,
that would be a huge. Mm-hmm. But once again, that's what we said from the beginning. We'd have to be totally wrong that no team like New York or LA would take a chance on him because of the baggage, like the owners, and not because the coaches are too fragile or anything, but the owners in those type of market, like the Kroenkes at LA, just trying to get a new stadium and moving the team. They probably don't want to deal with having Joe Mixon on the team.
Half the time, I don't think Stan Kroenke knows what team he actually owns and what players are on his team.
Yeah, he's like Trump. His son runs it.
Stan Kroenke owns Arsenal. I have plenty of beef with Stan Kroenke.
Okay, so we can just go ahead and say Stan Kroenke probably needs to croak. I'll say that.
As an Arsenal fan, I don't have a problem with that comment. I'm usually the voice of reason, but when it comes to my few teams that I pull for, I'm as crazy as anybody.
Okay.
Can I make one final more statement?
Sure.
I saw that Dana Jacobson is doing the sideline reporting in Tulsa. If she's doing the games, who's doing the bar?
She's got a little drinking problem, doesn't she?
She has a great drinking problem, but I saw she's up in Tulsa this weekend.
Didn't she give a drunk speech at the ESPYs or something once?
She did, and she got fired. She's working for CBS, yeah.
Eddie, do you call that a problem? I feel like you would call that progress. She's got a drink in progress.
I don't know. I don't know if she beats her husband. So, I mean, if she does that,
it's not the
as
drinking.
Long as she's only hurting herself, it's fine.
It's what you do after the drinking. The drinking's not the problem.
That's fair.
As long as you're just hurting yourself, I don't really see a problem with it. More so than
I think people would embrace that. The sideline reporter holding a beer. I mean, it's sports, right? We're at the.
I think there are rules against that.
She's probably a. I don't think she's drinking beer. I think she's probably
she's liquored up.
Yeah, liquor.
I wouldn't, because she could have
maybe like definitely a couple bottles of red.
She could have a gin and tonic.
Okay. Speaking of, guys, talk about the perfect show for us to do drunk. St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
it's a good day.
The problem is we started at 10 o'clock. Yeah, and I gotta get a haircut.
I could have gotten there. No problem. Could have gotten there.
Ezekiel Elliott had no problem starting early last weekend. When I was eating dinner last week in Dallas at a pretty nice place, he came and sat in the booth next to us.
Was this post-assault?
Yeah, it was post-sexual assault.
He walked in the door, you started pulling your shirt up and covering
But I thought it
yourself.
was kind of awkward that he was wearing green, and you know how people in green love to commit sexual assaults, especially in Waco. So,
Any more
how do you
fire
follow
takes,
that
Eddie?
one?
no, I'm out. The chamber is
It's
empty.
spent.
I could sing "Hell to the Victors" if you want, but we'll save that for another day.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you this. For more of the latest in recruiting information, go check out The Scoop, posted earlier this morning. Our man Josh McQuistion on the scene with the latest. A lot of recruiting getting ready to kind of kick up. We've got our first Rivals Camp series coming up April 1st and 2nd?
It's April 2nd. Yep.
Well, the combine and then the camp the next day, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I always forget about the combine. You're right.
So, that'll be coming up here in a couple of weekends, but spring football coming up as well. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Unofficial 40. I want to thank to all our co-hosts, I'll call them, Josh McQuistion, Eddie Radosevich, Joe Duvall. I'm Kerry Murdoch. Thank you guys. Have a great St. Patty's Day. Be safe. I'm talking to you guys specifically. Eddie,
Hey, I made it back from Dallas.
Uber is your friend.
We'll be there Monday.
Uber is everyone's friend all the time. Josh, enjoy it. I'm sure. I don't know. Are you dressing Laney up? Will we see pictures later on Facebook?
Yes, Lane. We had to find a green dress. Tiffany and I were having a little drink yesterday before we went to pick Laney up. As awful as that sounds, God, that's
We had
a
to get
sentence I
drunk
want to have
before we
back.
saw our daughter.
Yeah. We're gonna go pick up our 2-year-old, a little sauced.
Get a little meth in you next time.
Yeah, we stopped and it was at a mall. The restaurant was outside of a mall, and we were like, we don't have anything green for her. And so we had to go buy a green dress at the mall yesterday. So she is in green dress and has green barrettes in her hair. If that child's pinched, I'm going to be straight pissed about it.
Is it a green Michigan State shirt?
No, there is no Michigan State. And, you know, it's really funny. It's one of the things I would have never expected for myself. Tiffany wanted to get her a green shirt. I was like, let's get her a green dress. I like the girl in dresses. I make her even more of a girly girl than Tiffany does. It's very strange.
Joe, did you just want to point out that you're wearing a green Michigan State shirt?
Sure, I can do that.
I'm wearing a green shirt.
Yeah. This is the Michigan State's my team after Mateen Cleaves won a national title and won me a bracket when I was like 11 years old. So they've been
Flintstones.
Against the Eduardo Nahara-led Oklahoma Sooners.
You bastard.
Yep,
That's a travesty.
Yep.
You know, this whole week I have spent a lot of time looking at spring break videos and pictures
Have you?
on Old Row, and there is nothing like college. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
Eddie,
it made you nostalgic.
Eddie, those
even.
sites, that's not real spring break video, buddy. Those girls are.
No, that's real. That's 100% real.
Just let him have
That's
his fantasies.
that's the college that I loved.
All right, Eddie is the bastard that we love, and we're out of here. Thanks, guys. I've already said the goodbyes. We're not doing it again. So join us next week. We'll be back again for another episode of Unofficial 40. Thanks for listening. Go to iTunes. Give us a rating. We appreciate everyone that's done that so far. Keep them coming. We'll see you guys next time on the Unofficial 40.